So I'm going to talk about content categorization with mesh terms and artificial intelligence. What I really mean is natural language processing. So at the University of Virginia School of Medicine, we're currently in the process of rewriting all of its medical education software. So we are a lean shop when we use lean methodologies. One of the things that we did was we held SciPocs, and in a SciPoc, it's a lean tool for determining who provides the inputs, what those inputs are, what steps are taken during the process, what you get out of the process, and who receives the outputs. It's good for gaining higher level understanding, but when combined with discovery for a new project, a lot of times it could end up as a wish list session. We held 4 of them. So here's some actual statements made during the SciPoc. The first one was about syncing course materials that are supposed to version and have metadata associated with them, but we're supposed to replace Dropbox. And here was another statement, which was basically about adding learning objectives to questions. This was the programming team after those statements were made, but in reality, we actually started thinking about a few things. So this is actually what we have. So we have about 30,000 questions, maybe 20,000 learning objectives, 6,000 active learning objectives, 16,000 active data attributes. And that's not exactly a terribly large data set, but it's enough to experiment with. We can make suggestions for mappings based on questions or attribute content, including mapping learning objectives, categorical content, USMLE subject areas, Bloom's taxonomies, etc. Data recommendations can be provided in the actual application for faculty members and ISCs, and selecting or turning down recommendations can provide additional supervised learning for the model. Because of pre-processing and validation of the data outside of the classifier, it keeps it on par with more advanced classifiers while keeping the learning curve small. Now, can we actually take this any further? There are about 20,000 images. We also have tagged keywords, so if we wanted to, sure, we could use something like Azure's Cognitive Services, specifically their API for computer vision to catalog the images. The same recommendation process can then be provided to ISCs and faculty members that we use for content categorization. So you're basically creating a content, a recommendation engine, right? Now this is the actual meat of it though. Mesh terms are a hierarchical standard for cataloging and indexing medical information and data. So it's basically a medical term thesaurus, right? So by cross-referencing mesh terms or offering them as suggestions, you can standardize your metadata beyond internal usage so that you're using better universal terms that have specific synonyms and structures. This is an example of mesh data. So cancer is a term that's used in America, but neoplasms is something that's used as a standard term in other countries. In fact, cancer is a term for malignant neoplasms. Because mesh is hierarchical, you can target a more specific label in your classification, but be able to expand outward, walking up the branch of the hierarchy to get data to more general groups and terms. It also allows for synonyms, so you don't have to explicitly match with every possible label. Additionally, if medical schools added mesh terms to the AAMC curriculum inventory report, they could build out a nationwide database of classified content, which would mean data sets in the hundreds of thousands, if not more. This would require adding a mesh namespace to the curriculum inventory report schema in order to do it. So what actually value does this offer to us, right? So the 2 most important statistics in medical education testing are exam performance and student performance. Exam performance is needed to determine the validity and reliability of the test and for comparison to shelf and step exams later during their clerkships. Student performance across categories helps students assess their own needs. Data needs to be as accurately classified as possible, and that's often not the case with how it is right now. Doing it this way offers not only a more accurate look at performance based on standards, but also exam construction and pedagogy across medical industry terms for exploration. So what does this ultimately allow us to do? Well, in an idealized world, clinicians will have enough time to properly classify metadata on content. But realistically, session and exam constructions are often rushed out the door, relying on the knowledge of a support specialist with no medical education or training to fill the gaps. This leads to bad data, which we can prevent with appropriately applied recommendation scenarios. In doing so, our metadata is more accurate and standards-based, so evaluations are more accurate, and we can better adjust knowledge domains in a data-driven manner. So to put that into perspective, right now we have a term called USMLE content path that is mapped to questions within the exam system, and those USMLE content paths are in theory patterned after knowledge domain areas that are inside the shelf and step exams for clerkships. Right now, just based on that data, which a person has to enter in, so a professional, usually an ISC, if not a doctor, they have a 95% accuracy of being able to tell whether or not a student, based on their exams, is going to pass the shelf or step exam. So if we actually use natural language processing to offer better recommendations and we standardize those terms, we standardize what's actually being the labels with actual mesh terms, not only will we get a more accurate assessment of what the student performance might be, but we can also walk up and down the tree to get more general, more specific if we have to. And that tells us exam performance for students, but what they really actually want to do is they want to be able to go in and say, okay, well, students seem to be performing poorly in this particular area. Where have we taught that? And so with the curriculum mapping tool that we are building out, because of all the metadata that's attached to learning objectives and all the metadata that's attached to questions themselves, you actually will know what learning objectives are in which sessions and which domain areas are being taught. So you could pinpoint the exact sessions and the exact lectures that this information is being taught in or is not being taught in, and you can make adjustments along the way.